Hi, Misha here, and it's time to check out the Predator, as Picard called it. The Imperial Reman, or Romulan, Warbird Scimitar, or as we used to jokingly call it, Scimitar. The enemy ship from Star Trek Nemesis, Star Trek 10 film, the last Next Generation film, commanded by Praetor Shinzon, also known as Mad Max. This is a diecast model from Eaglemoss. This is in their kind of mid-size range, what they call their special editions, which seems to be what they've kind of settled on doing movie ships in. And while I've criticized some things for being in this large of scale, there are ships that I kind of just wish they would have done standard. For example, the Vulcan shuttle. This is one that I'm actually glad that they did in this scale, because this was a massive ship. Let me center it a little bit. I'm gonna stand there. And really, when you put it with the regular edition Enterprise here, the 1701E, they scale pretty well. Same goes for the Romulan Valdor that we got in the collection. So yeah, I'm glad they did do this one in the special. In the standard line, it just wouldn't have worked very well, because it's just, even on this scale, the detail has to be pretty general, pretty basic, because it is so big. Let's talk about the facts, and then some kind of beta canon and head canon of mine to make this fit into the Star Trek universe a little better. This is a large warship called the Warbird, even in the film. Size stats seem to be 890 meters long and 1,350 meters wide, thanks to these giant wings. Crew, including soldiers, is 3,000, give or take. 52 pulse disruptor cannons, 27 torpedo banks. Some places say they're photon torpedoes, but I would think they would be more Romulan plasma-based torpedoes, but who knows. It also could carry 40 some odd small Scorpion fighters, basically angry shuttles, housed in a very large bay. And of course, it's most well known for its Thalaron power core, which led to a Thalaron cloak, which Geordi LaForge said was perfect. He said it did not emit any tachyons or anti-protons or whatever, Star Trek. At least in the Next Generation, tachyon detection has been a long-standing way to get cloaks. Found out, so there's that. In addition to being perfect, this perfect cloak let the ship fire while cloaked, which we saw in Star Trek VI, Undiscovered Country. A bird of prey, a Klingon bird of prey, could fire while cloaked, at least torpedoes. But what this could do that could not, it could also raise shields while cloaked. And not only did it have standard primary shields, it had a whole secondary shield system as well, which was kind of operated in sections along the ship. We see that because they do drop cloak and shielding on one section to kind of lure them in. And then, of course, its primary doomsday weapon is the Therion Cascade Pulse, whatever gobbledygook, Therion emitter, which is sort of like a Death Star weapon, but instead of just blowing a planet up, it's more of a life killer. It doesn't seem to destroy inanimate stuff so much as it just melts tissue and things. The downside to it, much like Death Star Laser, is it takes several minutes to deploy. Speaking of that, this does have moving... No, this model doesn't, but the ship itself had moving parts. Like the wings and stuff, and spikes, and yada, yada. In the film, this faced off against two Valdor-type warbirds, which were cutting edge and known to have more offensive armament than a Diderodex, although maybe less defensive ability. And of course against the Sovereign class, which by the time of the film maybe wasn't the newest ship in Starfleet anymore, because it had been in service for almost a decade, but it was still very much a warship. So it went up against 3 cutting-edge ships for the day, which was the year 2379. At least the Enterprise and one of the 2 Romulan ships did survive, maybe both did, but all ships were severely damaged. And the Scimitar was ultimately destroyed in the film, of course, because that's what happens to all bad guy ships. So yeah, that's pretty much the canon facts. A couple of things. Yes, I have to say this, I apologize, but yes, I am blind, so I'm getting what I can on camera. I have to say that on the Star Trek videos especially, because those tend to be the ones that people are most picky on. So, doing what I can. If I'm not getting it on camera, I'll refund the money you paid. Check your PayPal. Anyway, the model itself is pretty good. I was actually excited to get this one because I wasn't sure what this one looked like. And it does have some relations to the Valdor with the swooping wings. It is definitely a ship designed to be imposing, no doubt about that. The wings, of course, are plastic. They're way too thin to be metal. The central body, though, is metal, with all the sticky out bits and stuff being plastic again. So relatively light, but the main body does give it some nice heft. It does sit on the stand pretty well, which is good, because there's a lot to be knocked on this one. But definitely one I was looking forward to getting. I'll talk about Nemesis as a movie another time. I'm doing kind of black box videos on those subjects, but again, kind of beta canon or head canon that makes this fit, because it's not terribly realistic that the Remans, essentially a slave race, could have made the most advanced ship in the Alpha Quadrant in secret without help. So it's said that this was actually developed in secret by the Romulans during the Dominion War to kind of go up against big ships like the Dominion battleship. It's also worth pointing out that the Klingons themselves had the pretty big ship in the Negavar class, which was nearly 700 meters long and carried a crew of 1,800 and had a large disruptor. Of course, even the Sovereign was 700 meters and had quantum torpedoes and everything. So one interesting thing that I pointed out in other videos was during the Dominion War, we pretty much see the Romulans just using Diderodex ships, which by that point were perhaps as much as 20 years old. So it's good that they were working on this as well as ships like the Valdor. But the war came to an end before they could deploy this, so they mothballed the prototype Scimitar. And when Picard's Mad Max clone Shinzon came out of the minds of Reman, kind of unifying the slave race, who had been used as warriors during the Dominion War, so they had military experience. I'll give them that. They weren't, I'm sure they had tons of battle-hardened people who returned, kind of getting a slight Narn from Babylon 5 vibe here. Anyway, so I could understand that his troops were battle-hardened. He allied with some in the Romulan military who didn't like the half-decade of peace with the Federation, and especially the Klingons, and essentially they allowed him to abscond with the Scimitar prototype and finish it out on a secret Reman base, outfit it, and then with, again, some in the military's support, use this ship to bully the Romulans into giving him the Praetor ship, which didn't work, so he just Theorloned the crap out of the Senate and then took it. I could understand, in 2378, 2379, after the war and other things, perhaps there had been other Reman uprisings. Maybe the Romulan Empire was kind of weakened and he took advantage of it, and so one powerful warship could have done the job. Now, this has the feeling of like all the eggs in one basket type ship. With so many weapons and advancements on board, it was kind of the Yamato or the Bismarck of its day. It was just, one big ship, but they only had it. Some sources also claim there were other incomplete prototypes, and Shinzon destroyed those, so no one else could get one. Perhaps. But I think that fits better than just the Remans. It's not so much that they built it that I find hard. It's that they designed it, that they developed the advanced tech. I mean, with blueprints, they had a whole planet, Remus. I'm sure they could have built it. But yeah, to design the Thalaron cloak and emitter and all that, I doubt it. So I think that kind of levels out some little wrinkles in this. And as we see in Star Trek Online, these are put into limited production later, even after the Scimitar was destroyed. But they're used very rarely, only a few were made. And they're used for high-level admirals or emperors and empresses ships, again, command ships, much like the Negvar. Very analogous to that, just a little bit bigger and beefier, and extremely ostentatious, but in a very aggressive military way, which actually really fits the whole Romulan mindset. I mean, look at the Dideridex. It was bigger than anything else we saw in Next Generation. So in a weird way, this is kind of a logical progression of that. I know a lot of people don't like the design of the ship. I just got this, so it's going to have time on me. I do think it's interesting. It was designed by John Eves, who usually does pretty good work. It's said that he kind of used the Jem'Hadar battleship as inspiration for the basic shape, which makes sense because it was designed during that war. It's also said that he took kind of inspiration from the Breen and the Sona ships for the kind of more asymmetric, spiky, lumpy design, and I do like the Breen design. The Sona, it's okay, but the Breen's pretty cool. So you could see where maybe Romulans were inspired by their adversaries during the Dominion War, because the Sona were on the side of the Dominion, at least nominally, and the Breen definitely were. But that's kind of what happened. In World War II, Japan copied the M1 Grand for their Type 5, and actually Germany copied the Sten gun for the MP 3008. So, yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Heck, Finland copied the PPS 4243 for the KP 44. So when your enemy has something that's good, a lot of times they will copy it. Yeah, I think that just kind of makes this fit a little better into Star Trek canon. On the other hand, you could just say this was kind of like giving a 12-year-old free rein and going, make the ultimate ship ever, boom, boof. I mean, it has everything. A big Death Star laser thing, perfect cloak, tons of guns, torpedoes, even has little fighters on board, although we don't really see them used much except for Picard and Data escaping in them. You know, even has kind of a multi-level large bridge, very reminiscent of the Executor Imperial Star Destroyer. But I can talk about Nemesis in the black box video. This is just about this model and kind of a first look. And I do like the model. I think Eaglemoss, given the design, did the best they could, because I could see this one being very hard to do. I think originally they might have even been planning to do it in the standard line, but they might have just discovered they couldn't make it work. Don't know. But I'm glad they did it. It'll fit well in the Romulan fleet. Or Reman. Whatever. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't seen it, I did a recent kind of Romulan fleet update with all the other ships. So you might check it out if you feel like it, or don't. If you could, like, share, and subscribe, though. And feel free to comment below. This is Misha, and I will catch you very soon next time.